Pontiac, Michigan to watch monster trucks with names like the Beast and Psycho and Master of Disaster. We'll also visit with Gary Porter. He's the driver of Carolina Crusher. That's all coming up on this edition of Super Trax, the very best in motorsports television. Like Tom Martin, Paul Schaefer, and Jeremy Finley. The four fastest will compete in the shootout for the championship. Here to describe the action is our pal, Scott Douglas.
Getting ready to do it for mud in Providence, Rhode Island with the United States Hot Rod Association right here on Super Trax. And Jeremy Finley is going to be the first to blast into this 80-foot mud pit, the S-Kicker. Finley drives it out of Boonsville, Virginia. How fast can he cover 80 feet, and can he stop at 80 feet? Those are the two questions we're about to answer. Oh, a super run, and he does shut her down in time. They love it in Providence. A great run for Jeremy Finley. He calls himself the wild man, and you can see why after this run. Look at that wheel come off the ground. Yet he sets it down, stays firmly in the mud pit, and this is how you stop it in time. You go sideways, you do what you have to, but you make sure you don't hit the barrier at the end of the 80 feet, because that gets you disqualified in mud racing. Jeremy Finley and the S-Kicker laying down a shot that I think is going to land him in the shootout a little bit later. The fast four make it, and it's hard to believe four others can beat 1.748, because that's what Finley has just done in the S-Kicker. 1.748, a superb run. Well, we're going to look now at the Let's Boogie machine. This is Tony Fiore out of Canton, Michigan. Let's Boogie is a 1927 T Roadster. Stops it in plenty of time. A good-looking shot for one of the best in the business, Canton, Michigan driver Tony Fiore, and Let's Boogie. We're going to boogie over to the replay section right now to take a look at it again as Tony gets off the line in great shape. Nice, smooth run. Didn't have much of a wiggle in the middle at all. Kept it straight and shut it down in plenty of time. Let's Boogie coming into your living room right now on Super Trax. You can see how he kind of gets in a rush there a little bit of what the S-Kicker laid down, but it didn't bother him at all. And it's a good run. 1.861. He needs to be one of the four fastest to get back in our shootout a little later. He's got a good chance with that run. Mike Spina and the Psychotic Beast next up. He comes out of Kingston, New Hampshire. Time to beat 1.748. Oh, yeah! He gets it shut down just in time and throws that right fist in the air. Mike Spina happy about that run as he gets it stopped in time. The Psychotic Beast with a legal run, and we'll see if it holds up as one of the fast fours this day goes on. Watch it again on the replay. Now, at the end of the 80-foot mud pit, you can see at the back of the vehicle there's a wire. That's the kill switch. It is actually pulled out of the vehicle at the end of 80 feet, so the engine immediately stops running. But you still got to stop the momentum. And look how close it was for Spina to get her stopped. He does it, though. And the Psychotic Beast has got a run at 1.982. Now remember, it's the four fastest runs in the first round that will get to come back in the shootout and determine our champion here at Providence on Super Trax. Here's the young phenom of mud racing, 19-year-old Matt Ward in the Mystic Warrior out of Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. Stops it down in plenty of time. It's a good-looking run for Matt Ward and the Mystic Warrior. So at least for the moment, he'll be no worse than fourth fastest. We'll get a look at the run here on the replay. And Ward looked like he kept it pretty straight, but stopped kind of short in the shutdown area, and that would indicate that he wasn't going quite as fast as he wanted to be. You want to use up most of that shutdown area, because that shows you had all the momentum you could at the end of 80 feet. And you can here, Matt Ward has shut her down in plenty of time. Still, it looks like it's going to be a good run for Matt Ward and the Mystic Warrior. Coming right at you now as that Ford-powered machine is picking up the rooster tail of mud here in Providence. Matt Ward, for the moment, will be the third fastest time we've seen so far at 1.906. So the time to beat is now 1.982. Mike Cena and Psychotic Beast will be on the bubble. Midnight Magic and David Ray, place down, New Hampshire, first to go after it. A solid run right there from Midnight Magic. We'll find out if it's good enough to make the Fast Four. You can see the U.S. Hot Rod official come into your screen there. He was disconnecting the cable that allows the U.S. Hot Rod officials to put the kill switch in. We've been talking about a safety factor that the U.S. Hot Rod Association has in all of its mud racing action. On the replay, you look at Dave Ray and Midnight Magic. The question is, was he fast enough to make the Fast Four? He has to get it under 1.982 if he's going to make it into that Fast Four here today. Another Ford-powered machine coming right at you on Super Trax. Dave Ray, longtime championship veteran here with the U.S. Hot Rod Association. His time, though, is not going to be good enough to make it into our shootout today at 2.050. Again, the time to beat is the fourth best time. The 1.982 is what you've got to beat to get into the shootout. That's what Ron Smith's trying to beat in the Gold Fever 1948 Fiat out of Schoolcraft, Michigan. And good-looking run right there for Ron Smith and the Gold Fever. We'll see if it's enough to put him on the gold standard today here in Providence, Rhode Island. Again, you can see the officials unhooking the kill cables from the back of the Gold Fever Fiat while we watch the replay. Ron Smith in good shape at Gold Fever. Again, the time to watch for is, did he beat 1.982? Because that's the fourth best spot so far. Let's get a look at Ron from our end zone camera. Note that he's going to really try to stay in the middle of the mud pit because of that rut on the right. He avoided it, and that was critical to having a successful run. A good shot down the middle, and at least for the moment, he's in the Fast Four, but at 1.952, that just means he goes on the bubble with this big gun coming after him. Paul Schaefer, the Mud Patrol, former Rookie of the Year out of Portage, Indiana. Great job in the shutdown area by Paul Schaefer and the Mud Patrol. That's how you use up every inch that you have available to you. You turn it sideways, you stand it up on its nose, whatever you got to do, but you don't break that barrier at the end of the 80-foot shutdown area. And this is a classic example of how you do it. The Mud Patrol is just going to let it spin out and keep it under control sideways. Boy, what a pretty job of shutting her down by Paul Schaefer. Now let's watch the run. Again, as we pointed out with Ron Smith, you want to stay toward the middle. He does that. He stays out of the rut. And it's a good-looking run for the Mud Patrol. Is it good enough to get him in the Fast Four? He had to beat 1.95. Yes, he did. Paul Schaefer, Mud Patrol, 1.929. And at least for the moment, that's good enough to put him into the shootout. The Beast P Blue out of Intercourse, Pennsylvania. Here's Alvin S. Yes, indeed. He stops it in time. Beast P Blue with a legal run, but is it good enough to make it into the Fast Four shootout coming up later on Super Trax? Beast P Blue had to beat a 1.929. Mud Patrol sitting on the bubble with that time. On the replay, Beast P Blue looks like he's in good shape, but whether he ever had enough speed is the only question we'll decide here. Another look at Pennsylvania driver Alvin Esch and the Beast P Blue. He comes out in pretty good shape, but he catches the rut right there that we've been talking about. That's going to cost him a little bit of time, and when you're talking about fractions, you just can't afford to have that happen. Beast P Blue at 1.959. 1/100th of a second is all he missed the shootout by. Now, the three-time champion, Tom Martin and Super Trooper out of Portage, Indiana. No way, that's going to be good enough, as the Super Trooper had all kinds of problems. And I think we're going to find it's that same rut we've been talking about on the right-hand side of the track that cost Tom Martin. Well, really, it looks like it was a bad start that got him, as he just leaped out of the starting block and got himself into the mud pit on air instead of on mud, and you don't want that to happen. Watch the start. All four wheels leave the ground, and then he hits that rut on the right-hand side. Just not the kind of run we're used to seeing from Tom Martin and the Super Trooper. And indeed, it is not enough to get him into the shootout today. 2.008, a disappointing shot for Tom Martin and the Super Trooper. So the Fast Four go into the shootout. The F-Kicker, Let's Boogie, Mystic Warrior, and Mud Patrol. Gold Fever barely misses out. Ron Smith will have to take it on home with Beastie Blue, Psychotic Beast, a disappointed Tom Martin and Super Trooper, and Midnight Magic rounding out the first round competition.
So the shootout in Providence will feature a veritable who's who of mud racing. Mud Patrol, Mystic Warrior, Let's Boogie, and S-Kicker. Jeremy Finley in S-Kicker has got to be the mudder to beat after his amazing run of 1.748 seconds. Then again, we know anything can happen. We'll be back with the shootout in just a moment. And Mud Patrol. And once again, here's Scott Douglas.
A rabid crowd getting it on and having a good time in Providence, Rhode Island with the U.S. Hot Rod Association Mud Stars. The S-Kicker, Let's Boogie, Mystic Warrior, and Mud Patrol laid down the four best shots in the first round, but that means nothing now. All those times are wiped out, and everybody has to do it one more time.
It's getting pretty bad there at the end. Hopefully we can do about the same we did the first round.
When you said pretty bad, what do you mean?
The starting line's getting real rutted up. The pit's staying good, but the starting line's going away.
How's S-Kicker performing?
We got the fastest time so far. Hopefully it holds up.
The track has been going away. It may be an advantage for S-Kicker to go first here in the shootout. And he does get it stopped down. But Jeremy Finley doesn't look like a real happy man. That was not an outstanding run. But we just don't know how bad the mud pit is and that starting line is at this point to tell if that's going to hold up. Really wild start. You could see how the front wheel got kicked way up in the air. And here he's starting almost to leave the pit on the side. Jeremy Finley did not seem thrilled with that run. Let's watch it from the side angle, and you're going to see him veer way off to the right as the driver faces the track. And it had to cost him a little bit of time. The S-Kicker and Jeremy Finley, much slower than his earlier run. The distance is covered in 2.089. But we'll find out where that lands him in the shootout, because everybody has to lay down a new shot.
Yeah, it feels pretty good considering last night we had some major problems with the motor. We did a lot of work today, changed everything drastically, and it seemed to help. We just got to make a couple of small changes and we'll be ready to come back.
What drastic changes did you make?
We put a new ignition in the car, changed the fuel system completely, and just tried something different to get her to work again.
Amazing what Let's Boogie had to do to make it here into the shootout. Let's see if Tony's made the right changes. It stops in time, and Let's Boogie lays down what he hopes will be a run to put him in the #1 spot. Coming right at you on Super Trax. Tony Fiore and Let's Boogie. Boy, it seemed like a nice solid run. Stayed right in the middle of the track. Did not have too many problems with the rut. And shuts it down in good shape. A little bit of wheel spin at the line. He didn't really get off as clean as I'm sure he would have liked. I don't know if that cost him much or not. We're going to find out. Here comes the time. At least for the moment, it puts him in first place. Let's Boogie at 2.002 is now the time to beat. Here comes the kid, Matt Ward, out of Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I went up to start line. There was one set of rushers there to start line. One side was real deep, one side wasn't. So I took the left-hand side over to get out of those ruts. I think at the start line, I switched tires a little bit, and I let off about 5 feet at the finish line. So I got stopped in time. But it worked out.
Matt Ward, what do you think of the track?
The track? I like the track. It's nice, fast track. I think we'll do good in the final round.
We're going to find out, because here comes the confident kid, 19-year-old Matt Ward and the Mystic Warrior. Boy, you can see why he had that confidence. That is an outstanding-looking run from Matt Ward. Although, look at his face. He doesn't seem thrilled with it. Didn't seem real excited about it, although to this eye, it looks pretty good. Let's watch the Ford machine coming at you. I'll tell you, he doesn't have many problems in there. Didn't get kicked around by the ruts at all. Got a good start. We'll get another angle at it, see if we can detect anything wrong. Of course, Matt Ward, the kid, is a perfectionist, and he may have thought he could have got a little more out of it. I'll tell you what he did get out of it, enough to take the lead. The time for Mystic Warrior, 1.967. He's got the lead. He can finish no worse than second, but he wants to win. Here's a Mud Patrol and Paul Schaefer.
Well, what I did to the car, the track is getting so rough and bouncy. What we're doing is putting a lot more air pressure in the tires, trying to get the tires to break loose and skid across the top, not hit the holes. When the tire's real low, it bounces down and acts like a shock, and it pushes the whole front end up off the ground. We're trying to keep the car level and straight across the mud.
Good lesson in how you set up for the mud racing shootout from the Mud Patrol and Paul Schaefer. He barely stopped it in time. The U.S. hot rod officials, though, are saying, yes, indeed, it's a legal run. He did not touch the barrier at the end, which would have DQ'd him. They'll now disconnect the kill switch cables while we wait to see if his time is good enough to beat Matt Ward's 1.967. Let's watch it again. And there's the bounce that Paul was talking about in the interview we had a moment ago. The extra air pressure kept him on top of the mud without sinking in. Was it good enough to get the win? We're going to find out after one more look at the replay. Paul Schaefer and the Mud Patrol out of Portage, Indiana, riding along, skimming across the top. And here comes the time. He needed to beat 1.967. Paul Schaefer and the Mud Patrol, 1.908. It is a championship run for Paul Schaefer and Mud Patrol. He wins it in Providence. The kid, Matt Ward, goes second. Then it's Tony Fiore third, and Jeremy Finley rounding out the Fast Four. There's your winner, Paul Schaefer, coming out of the cab. That 1932 Ford Coupe of the Mud Patrol. He's going to go over and talk to our Steve McDonald about that run today as Mud Patrol takes the victory.
Oh, it's a big win, but Tom Martin got the car ready, and he's been trying new stuff with it, and he's been experimenting, and now I think he's got to go home and change his like he got this stuff. This car is really running good.
Talk about the changes and how they help.
We changed air pressure, shocks, and for the rough track. The car's got so much motor from Vance in his engine. They build a race motors, and they got so much horsepower, we can kill the motors and, you know, cutting the horsepower down.
Strategy going into this one?
Oh, yeah, I had to find a good spot to line up. I didn't know where to line up. There was like 5 different passes out there, and I just picked the right one. Boy, I'll bet Tom Martin is about ready to just kick himself for turning Mud Patrol over to Paul Schaefer. Tom couldn't lose when he drove it. Now Paul is the one standing in the winner's circle more than anybody else. And how about young Matt Ward? He continues to show the old guys how it's done. He is really a superstar in the making on the mud racing circuit. Still to come on Super Trax, Monster Truck Racing from the Silverdome in Pontiac, Michigan. But first, our weekly Super Trax trivia question. Since we've just thrilled to mud racing action, let's talk about mud racing. Mud races can reach a wheel speed of how many miles per hour before screeching to a halt at the end of the track? A, 100 miles per hour, B, 200 miles per hour, or C, 250 miles per hour. We'll have the answer, and Monster Madness when Super Trax continues. Before we go to the Silverdome, here is the answer to this week's trivia question. What wheel speed do mud racers reach before hitting the brakes? The answer is B, 200 miles per hour. Isn't that impressive? 0 to 200 in about 2 seconds. Helps you to understand the driving skills required in the sport. Well, as we promised, Super Trax takes you to the Silverdome in Pontiac, Michigan, where 6 awesome monster trucks are trying to blow the roof off the place. The fast qualifier, Snakebite. He's driven by Colt Cobra with a time of 5.15 seconds. That means he gets flamethrowers all night after a first-round bye. And if you haven't seen this truck, you're in for a real treat. It's one of the newest and coolest-looking monsters on the U.S. Hot Rod Association circuit. And isn't Colt Cobra a great name for a monster truck driver? Round 1 is about to get underway, so let's go to Pontiac and Scott Douglas.
Tom, already a big story has developed here in the Silverdome. The grave digger is not going to make it to the first round of competition. Want to show you what happened to the digger in qualifying. Leslie Anderson, the brother of truck owner Dennis Anderson behind the wheel, and there, that metal piece flying out the back, one of the drive shaft loops. Another one falls off at the end of the run. The grave digger's done for the night. He'll not be back for the first round of competition.
I broke the main shaft and transmission, the drive shaft. I put the drive shaft in, but the main shaft is broken. It'll take me about 45 minutes to change the transmission.
Do you think you'll make it back for the next round? Is that enough time?
No, there's no way I can make it back.
Well, you're out for the evening.
Yeah, I'll be out for the evening.
Very disappointing for Les Anderson, but we've got an outstanding field ready to go as we look at the Goodyear first-round pairing. After Snake Fight's by-run, Beast will take on the Master of Disaster. Then Psycho is coming out to take on the Pony Express, and we'll look at Barely Tame, his first-round opponent, the Keystone Crusher. First up, though, we're going to see the by-run of this guy, the Snake Fight. The new hot shot out of Cobra Creek, Colorado, Ross Cooperman and Joe Nunez caught up with Colt Cobra before this run.
Tell us about your monster truck, Snake Bite.
Well, let me tell you something, Ross and Joe. I built this truck last year to come out here and compete against these boys and just show them what real monster truck's all about. And let me tell you right now, right lies behind here is a power-beating Ford 557 cubic inch. I've been chasing that green truck over ours here in November, and he put me out. And I'm here to stay. I'm going to stake my claim to this Silverdome tonight.
They may not come any cockier than that guy right there, Colt Cobra. He gets a by-run as our fast qualifier in Snake Fight. I'll tell you what, you really got to like a guy who comes out and wants to hammer it anyway. With a by-run, all he had to do was roll over the cars and make a legal run and move into the next round. But that's not the way this guy is made. Watch Colt Cobra hammer it right here. Getting up and over that first set of cars. And now to take on the second stack of cars. Once again, Colt Cobra sends her skyward. A good, solid legal run with a bye. Snake Fight will now move into the semifinal round. His opponent is about to be determined between the Beast and Master of Disaster, who'll be coming out next. One more time with Colt Cobra. He takes those first three cars, gets them in pretty good shape, and has a lot of momentum built up for the second stack of cars. And Snake Fight lets him see what he's got in the Pontiac Silverdome. A lot of Ford fans in this part of the country, and Snake Fight loves showing off for him right here today on Super Trax. Well, now we get a look at the Beast and the Master of Disaster. They'll go side by side. Our first elimination matchup of the day. From Dayton, Ohio, it's Bob Holman bringing out the Beast, lining up to go up against a Minnesota-based Chevrolet. This is Jim Thomas behind the wheel of the Master of Disaster out of Albany, Minnesota.
What goes into that? If you are a little bit lower on power, what are you reacting to? You're driving over cars and you're going over dirt. Can you tell a little bit more about that?
Just the main thing is getting a good start, getting them off the line, off the starting line.
What kind of a skill does it take to be a driver of a monster truck?
I think you got to be more crazy than anything.
Is that how you would describe yourself?
You bet.
We're going to find out how crazy he is right here because he's got to let it all hang out as he goes up against the Beast. The win to the Master of Disaster, and Jim Thomas as the Beast is underpowered coming over that last set of cars. On the replay from the end zone, you can see both trucks slow a bit off the starting line, but then the Master of Disaster able to pick up momentum right here in between the sets of cars while the Beast had run out of power. And Jim Thomas will get a date with Snake Fight in our semifinals a little later on Super Trax after that victory. A different angle this time on the replay, and you'll see as they go over that first set of cars, that's it for the Beast. He runs out of power at that point. Don't know what went wrong on Holman's truck, but he's done. It's all Master of Disaster on the second half of the course. From Albany, Minnesota, driving the Chevrolet, Jim Thomas wins it in the Master of Disaster. Well, our next first round matchup will send the Psycho trackward against the Pony Express. Gary Franz The Psycho driver talks about Ross Superman.
Gary, how'd you get that name?
It's kind of a reputation I've gathered over the years with my other truck. The way I drove and the way I perform, the guys have kind of just called me crazy and idiotic, and it just kind of stuck.
Well, what are some of the crazy things you do with Psycho when you're out on the track?
Well, basically, I do a lot of wheelies, and most of the time what I'm famous for is my backwards wheelie, and I've stood it up on the front end before and bounced it on the nose, not by choice, but when the crowd's there and the people start cheering, there's nothing you can do but really stand on it and please the crowd.
Oh, that's a lot of fun, but here with the U.S. Hot Rod Association today, it's pure out racing, and he's got to beat this guy, Anthony Portier, and the Pony Express. The Mustang lines up at the line. Portier out of Dayton, Ohio, ready to go up against Gary Graham Psycho. No contest at the finish line, although Anthony Portier, just for good measure, pounds out our finish line pole, but at that point he had completed a legal run. That is not a DQ. Under U.S. Hot Rod Association rules, you've got to keep two wheels, one front wheel and one back wheel, over the obstacle. And as you'll see at the end of the run, Portier does have that requirement met. So even though he knocked out the finish line pole, he did nothing illegal. It is a victory for the Pony Express and Anthony Portier. We'll look at it again. Off the start line, Psycho seemed to lose power, kind of burped there at the starting line. Then he was able to get some momentum going once he cleared the first set of cars. But at that point, it's too late. And the Pony Express Mustang has already got himself a victory. Anthony Portier moves into the semifinal round. His opponent will be one of these two trucks in the next round. Barely Tame, the truck on the left, and the Keystone Crusher on your right. The Keystone State produces Dave Harris. He's out of York, Pennsylvania in the Crusher. The Chevrolet with that slogan a lot of Chevys like to use. Have you driven over a Ford lately? Emblazoned on the front of the truck. There's a Barely Tame Ford. This is Doug Spanier out of Albany, Minnesota.
Doug, what do you think of the conditions here at the Silverdome for tonight's race? Do they differ from other courses?
Most of the courses that we run on have dirt all the way from the starting line past the finish line, whereas tonight we have the concrete in between. It'll be a little bit harder landing. It'll take a qualifying round or first round to get used to it, adjust to it, but otherwise it's comparable.
That's Doug Spanier. He's ready to go in Barely Tame on the left of your screen against the Keystone Crusher. And he wins it right there. Doug Spanier and Barely Tame taking the victory over Dave Harris and the Keystone Crusher. There you see the Ford victorious from the end zone. Let's take a look at Doug Spanier right here. He talked about the concrete. That's what he's on now. Gets a little momentum up the ramp, and a good-looking run for Barely Tame. He'll move into the semifinals in what will be an all-Ford matchup. He'll be taking on the Pony Express a little bit later. Only one Chevy has made it to the Final Four. That's the Master of Disaster. But right here, it was all Ford power as Doug Spanier takes the victory in Barely Tame. Keystone Crusher never got a whole lot of momentum on this course, and he falls prey to a good, strong run from the Barely Tame Ford and Doug Spanier. So our Final Four has been determined here at the Pontiac Silverdome. Snakebite got a bye run. He's going to meet Master of Disaster, who put away the beast in our first round of competition. The rest of the Goodyear first round results show the Pony Express beating Psycho, and then Barely Tame knocks off the Keystone Crusher Chevrolet.
Thank you, Scott. As the dust settles in the Silverdome, the Monsters are refueling and making repairs in preparation for round two. While they do that, we're going to take time out to hear from our sponsors. When Super Trax returns, we'll chat with veteran racer Gary Porter. Gary Porter isn't a busy man. The gentleman from Wadesboro, North Carolina, is doing it again this year, traveling around the country and entertaining his thousands of fans in race after race. One of our Super Trax crews recently spent some time with Gary to find out how he's doing.
I'm Steve McDonald with Gary Porter from Wadesboro, North Carolina. We are indeed a long way from Wadesboro, North Carolina, Gary, and so are you. 6.5 years ago you got going in this business. Talk about how you get into it.
Well, we started back in 1985. My brother, he opened a four-wheel drive center, and he needed something to advertise for the shop there to help promote it. And me and him both was interested in monster trucks, so, we sort of teamed up together and went for it. We built the first truck and just started doing local shows, and we started, just building and building and getting bigger and bigger into it. So here we are today. In the very beginning, when I quit my public job and went on the road full-time, I couldn't afford to hire anybody to go with me. So I just, took off by myself, and I would buy, canned food, soup, and stuff, in the grocery stores. I'd go back to the motel room and heat it up in the sink, under the hot water. And, that's how I got started, just trying to, save every dollar I could and, try to invest and make my equipment, more competitive. I've been having a problem lately of cutting a real close light. I've been asleep on the line a few times and lost some races, and that's my main thing I'm concentrating on right now is just cutting a real close light and trying not to bring the engine RPMs up too high so I won't spin out on the line and lose the race, because in these short races, the race is won right at the starting line. A lot of the time, you just have a gut feeling where you won or lost. I mean, you really can't tell in the truck exactly, but you just have a gut feeling, and most of the time, as soon as you cross the finish line, you know where you won or lost.
When you're on the road, there's a lot of thousands of miles that you travel all by yourself. That's got to be tough.
It is. Well, like this year, I've already been to California and back by myself, and that's a lot of hours just sitting in the truck, by yourself, just listening to the radio and talking once in a while on the CB, and, a lot of thoughts go through your mind. You wonder if it's even worth it. Why am I out here? I don't have no personal life back home, and sometimes I just want to quit and go back and have a normal life.
Now, last year, you had that very decision in front of you.
Yeah, I was ready to quit, and I had everything for sale. I was ready to sell out and just go back, and live a normal life and live at home. And then, some things turned around, some things I like. I'm looking for a big sponsor, to come around, and, I'm here to stay now.
Why do you do it, Gary?
Just being competitive. I like traveling, seeing a lot of nice people out here, and, and seeing the country. And, it's just something, once you do it, you can't just walk away from it.
Driver of the Year twice, and that's a reflection of how the other drivers who vote on that award think about you.
Well, I try to help them all I can, because being out here by myself, I have to depend on them a lot. There are a lot of stuff I can't do on the truck by myself, and I have to go over and ask them to help me, and they always do, and so when somebody else has trouble, I always try to be there.
Friends get competitors, and then friends again.
That's right. Everybody's friends, out in the pits, in the motels, on the road. Everybody will help everybody. But when you pull to the line to race one of them, you better believe they're not going to cut you any slack.
Thanks to Gary Porter for spending some time with us. And good luck, Gary, in the racing that lies ahead. When we return on Super Trax, the Final Four from the Silverdome in Pontiac, Michigan. So, stay with us. In the Silverdome in Pontiac, Michigan, the brand new and wicked-looking snakebite will take on Master of Disaster. And Pony Express faces Barely Tame for the right to move on to the championship round. Here to describe the action is the voice of Super Trax, Scott Douglas.
The Silverdome semifinalists working their way onto the track to get ready to see who's going to go to the finals here with our monster truck competition on Super Trax. It'll be Snakebite taking on the Master of Disaster. Master is the only Chevrolet left in the field. Then Pony Express goes side by side with Barely Tame. There you see the Ford of the Snakebite on the right. The Chevrolet Master of Disaster is on the left of the screen. Joe Nooney was able to catch up with Jim Thomas, the driver of Master of Disaster.
How's it going so far in the Silverdome track?
It's going great. I had an excellent run last time. I kept her straight between cars and held her wide open. That's the main thing.
That's an interesting point. Are you wide open all the way through, or do you ease off at the centerpiece here where it goes back to concrete?
No, I don't let up for nothing.
That's the way you've got to drive it when you're going to take on this guy. Colt Cobra behind the wheel of the Snakebite Ford.
Well, the way you're driving it, you almost seem to have an easy time with it. I noticed that you seem to ease off the throttle after the first set of cars. That looks like technique you've developed.
Well, over the years, we've learned a lot of different driving experiences. I learned by letting off the throttle a little bit, it'll bring the front end down faster, and I have more time on the ground where I can set up for the second set.
It almost looks like you're on smooth ground.
Well, so far, like I said, the Ford Snakebite's been doing a real good job. We're going to keep it up. We're going to keep pounding on these guys for the rest of the year.
And one more thing. I noticed when you were, announced that you were in the semifinals, you got a big round of applause. You quickly seem to be becoming a fan favorite here at the Silverdome.
That's right. We run on television all last year. We brought this truck out. It's totally unique. It's totally different. People like it. Everybody's falling in love with it. This is taking a little bit of time.
Snake fight ready to go. Let's watch both the trucks in between the two sets of cars because you heard both drivers say they're going to handle it differently. Let's see. It looks like Snake Fight had the better way of handling that distance between the sets of cars. He gets a victory. Oh, Master of Disaster almost ran into it. Jim Thomas got that Chevrolet shut down just in time. Snake Fight's your winner. Let's go to the replay. Isolated on the Snake Fight board. You can see the bad boy coming at you. And he really launches it up that second set of cars. What a run for Snake Fight. A victorious run in the Silverdome. Now on our next angle for the replay, in between the two sets of cars, remember, Master of Disaster said he was not going to let up. Snake Fight did let off the gas in between the cars to kind of settle that front end down. Here's where he hammers it, and it worked out great for him. A great run for Snake Fight and Colt Cobra. That's an impressive victory, some 3 truck lengths over the Master of Disaster. Snake Fight will go into the finals against either Pony Express or Barely Tame. So Ford fans know it's going to be an all-Ford final. Snake Fight's a Ford, and so are these two guys. The Barely Tame Ford and Doug Spanier out of Albany, Minnesota, ready to go up against Anthony Fortier and the Pony Express Ford out of Dayton, Ohio.
We're here with Anthony Fortier, who is the driver of Pony Express. He is now going to be in the next round of elimination, and he's going to be competing against Barely Tame. What do you think of that?
He's a good runner. I just got to try and keep the truck on the ground, out of the air, and not bounce too much, and I think we'll be able to take him.
When I watch these monster trucks, they are in the air and bouncing. How are you going to not make that happen?
Try and hit the beginning of the ramp a little slower and get on it when I'm on top of the cars, and try and come off a little slower and just try and make the distance and the difference up between the cars. And the last pile of cars, it really don't matter. I can hit them as hard as I want and get as high as I want, as long as I can get over the first set without bouncing.
Ready to go. You can see Barely Tame. Thumbs up from Doug Spanier. He's looking for a green light, and it's showtime. Wild run for the Pony Express, and that's going to cost him. When we see it on the replay, you'll be able to see where Pony Express lost this race, and that was coming off that first set of cars. He got really out of control and was unable to hammer the throttle heading up to the cars for the second time. We're isolated on the Pony Express Mustang, and there was his problem, a wheelie in between the cars, and you can't afford to have that happen. He had virtually no momentum to hit the second set of cars with. In the meantime, in the other lane, Barely Tame was having basically a smooth run. You're going to see it right here as Doug Spanier earns a date with Snake Fight in the final. Right here was the difference in between the cars. Pony Express in trouble, and a good solid shot from Barely Tame. Doug Spanier takes the victory. No doubt, if Pony Express did not pop the wheelie, he'd have won the race. So here's our Goodyear second round results bracket. Snake Fight defeats Master of Disaster. Barely Tame knocks off Pony Express. Those two Fords will meet in the final.
So it's Snake Fight and Barely Tame in the finals. Now, while you decide who you're going to root for, we'll pause for some words from our sponsors. And after posting the fastest time in qualifying, then sent Master of Disaster packing. In the other bracket, Barely Tame stopped the Keystone Crusher in his track, then beat Pony Express. So it's Snake Fight and Barely Tame. Snake Fight has lane choice, and Scott Douglas has the microphone.
And these fans have the attention of our Super Trax cameras. Everybody having a good time in the Silverdome, ready for the final. It will be Snake Fight, Colt Cobra out of Cobra Springs, Colorado, against Barely Tame, Doug Spanier out of Albany, Minnesota. One side-by-side run to see who is the champ of the Silverdome today. Doug Spanier, Barely Tame. Spanier's Racing Stable has produced the Master of Disaster truck and the Barely Tame truck for the last few years. Barely Tame now seems to be the king of that stable.
How do you think you're going to do against Colt Cobra? He looks awful tough in that Snake Bite truck.
I think I'll have him off the line, but for the finish, it might be kind of tough because he's got a little bit better suspension.
Fairly tame is a truck with a lot of horsepower, but this truck does have a great suspension setup, and Colt Cobra knows how to drive it. From Cobra Creek, Colorado, the Snakebite Ford looking to get a win in the Silverdome. He'll have to beat Fairly Tame to get the job done. Fairly Tame's got the lead, but he couldn't finish the job. He went out of control midway through the second set of cars, and your Silverdome superstar today is Snakebite and Colt Cobra. He takes the victory. Let's watch him on the isolated replay. A good, smooth run, even though out of the hole, Fairly Tame got the advantage. Colt Cobra did not panic. He just ran his nice, smooth race, and it's enough to get him the victory as Fairly Tame careened out of control and into his lane before getting her stopped down on the second half of the course. Keep your eyes on the big blue truck at the bottom of the screen. That's Fairly Tame. He had the lead here, but his problems come before he gets to the second set of cars, shooting over into Snakebite's lane. Luckily for Colt Cobra, the Snakebite truck is already gone and headed for victory lane. Colt Cobra comes out of the Silverdome with the victory. He's on his victory lap, waving at the fans. A big win for the Ford fans here today on Super Trax.
You were well in the air. In fact, I don't think your front wheels ever touched the ground.
Well, I tell you what, I knew Doug, like I said earlier, I knew he'd be my toughest competitor if we both made it into the finals tonight. I've been watching him all night. He's been pushing it real hard up the line. I knew we was going to have to get over that first set before him because he's been making up a lot of wheel speed in between the cars. And we just hit it in the high side, in the high top gear, and, you know, the Ford Snakebite just pulled it out in the end. And, you know, I didn't even see him. I knew he'd be there, though, wherever it might end up.
If the competition on this hour of Super Trax is any indication, we can expect to hear a lot of Snakebite in the weeks ahead. The brand-new computer-designed high-tech truck made the trip to the winner's circle look pretty easy. We'll be back to wrap things up in a few moments.